Hello dear students, so now today we would move ahead in this first chapter of class 9th science, that is matter in our surrounding. So today we are to discuss some definitions here. Okay, so first one is rigidity. What is rigidity? Okay, we are talking about the rigidity here. So we are saying that solids are rigid. So why are the solids rigid? Now if you see, this is the solid, so I can say this is rigid. Why? Because it has the tendency to retain its shape and size. Today, now if you see, this is the marker. If I want to change its shape, and if I want to change its size by compressing it, or by I want to change its shape by just bending it, I cannot do this. Okay, so it what does it mean? It means it's a rigid. It's a rigid. Rigidity means I cannot change its shape and size. Okay, so the solids are having this one property. So solids have the property to retain its shape and size. So this property is known as the rigidity. Whereas this property is not there in the case of liquid. If you have a liquid, one glass of liquid, you just pour this liquid in a bowl there. So it would change its shape. Earlier the shape of the liquid was kind of the glass. Now you just keep it in bowl, so it would take the shape of the bowl. Means the liquids can change its shape. The liquid do not retain its shape. The shape was earlier of the glass, but now it has taken the shape of the bowl there. It means the shape changing. So where the shape is changing, it means there the rigidity property is very less. Means you can say they are not rigid at all. Okay, similarly this is the case there in the gases also. So gases, the gases are also changing their shape and size. Okay, so hence we can say that this is the property of the solids only. So solids are rigid. Solids are rigid. So rigidity means property by which you can say property by which an object, property by which an let me write here, property by which an object retains its shape and size is called as rigidity. So we can say solids are rigid, whereas liquids and gases are not rigid. Why they are not rigid? Because they are changing their shape and size. The objects which are not changing their shape and size, we would call them as the rigid. They are having the rigidity property, isn't it? Note it down. So the next property is the compressibility. What is this compressibility? Now if you see, let's say suppose we have a huge amount of gas. This much gas is there. Okay, now I can compress this, and I can compress this, and I can just fill a cylinder over by this one gas. Means you have a huge you have a huge amount of gas. This gas can be compressed. You have many examples for that. Take a balloon. Can you compress the balloon? Yes, you can compress. You can press it. You can compress the volume. So sorry, compress the balloon, isn't it? So means we can compress the gases. Compress the gases means we can decrease their volume. Earlier, suppose let's say you have a cylinder like that, where you have a piston. This is the piston. This is known as piston. You can press it. Okay. Let's say you have a gas up to here inside this. Okay. Right now, just press this piston downside now. Same container is there. Now the piston has come here. Now the gas would be there only in this much space. This is the piston. You have compressed. You have just applied the pressure over there. So now a pressure over the piston, and the gas is reduced to only this much amount. Okay. Now you would not say that the gas has been decreased. No, the volume has been decreased. Earlier there was higher volume because more space was there. So volume of the gas was higher. So here you can say volume is lesser now because space is lesser now. So this is the property of the gases. We can change the means the volume of gas. Here the gas was having higher volume, more amount of space is there. Here it is having lesser volume. It means what? It means the gases are compressible. We can compress the gas, but we cannot do it in the case of liquid. Let's say you have the liquid here inside, water. Can you compress it into this much amount? No, the water would come out then, isn't it? So you cannot compress the water. Similarly, you cannot compress the solid. Let's say inside it you have the stone solid. Can you compress it and just make it of this much size? No, you cannot do it. So we can say liquids and solids are not compressible, and the gases are compressible. We can change their volume. We can change the volume of gases. So compressibility means the property by which we can decrease the volume is known as compressibility. Okay, so write this. Compressibility is the property due to which a substance can be compressed, means its volume can be decreased. Gases are compressible, whereas solids and liquids are not compressible. Isn't it? Okay, note this down. And the next property is the fluidity. Fluidity means anything which is flowing, so it's a fluid. Anything which is not rigid, you can say. Let's say this marker is there, so this marker would not flow. This marker would not flow. Why? Because it is rigid. It cannot change its shape. So which are rigid, they cannot flow. But which are not rigid, they can flow. Let's say you have some water here. This water can flow because it can change its shape. It is not rigid. The water is not rigid. So that is why the water can flow. Similarly, the gas also can flow. So water and the gases, liquid and the gases are fluids. We call them as fluids. What do we call them? Fluids. They are fluids. They are not rigid. Whereas solids are not fluids. Solids are rigid. Solids are rigid. That you should know. Okay. Solids are rigid. Liquids and gases are fluids because they can flow. So fluidity means flowing tendency of a substance is called fluidity. Like gases and liquids are fluids and solids are not fluids. Okay. Note it down. This is the next property. Next is the kinetic energy. If you see any object which is, like say this marker is moving. Okay. So anything that is moving is having some kinetic energy. Any object you take or any particle, moving particle, like in the case of particles of solids, liquid and gases. So if the particles are moving, so they are having some kinetic energy, isn't it? So anything that is moving have some kinetic energy. Getting it or not? Anything that is moving have some kinetic energy. Okay. And if you see in case like we have this is the solid, this is liquid and this is the gas. So in case of the solids, the particles are very close to each other, isn't it? In case of the liquid, the particles are more far, okay, apart from each other. But in case of the gases, the particles are very far. The particles are continuously moving here and there and they are very far. Okay. So here if you see the particles do not have the space to move more freely. Here the particles cannot move freely because they do not have more space here. They would move but not too much. So that is why the kinetic energy of the particle would be very less here. Now if you see the particle have some space here, so they can move more freely, isn't it? So here the particles would have more energy in case of liquid. Now in case of the gases, if you see the particles have more space to move. The particles can move anywhere in this space. So they would move here and there, here and there. So in case of the gases, the particles of the gases would be the highest kinetic energy. Which is moving more fast would be having the highest kinetic energy, isn't it? So this is solid, this is liquid, this is gas. So if someone asks you which one is having the highest kinetic energy, which one particles are having the highest energy, so you would say the particles of the gases are having the highest energy, kinetic energy, isn't it? Yes. Why? Because they have more space to move. Here the space is not too much there. Okay. So hence we can say the kinetic energy in case of the gases, particles of the gases is highest. Are you getting this? Are you getting this? That you should know. Okay. Now, if you increase the temperature now, let's say we increase the temperature of solid, liquid and gas, then the particle would be moving more and more. Okay. So on increasing the temperature, the speed of the particles would be higher. Suppose if you boil the water, and you just put some sugar there, so this sugar would dissolve faster. Let's say you have the cold water and you have the hot water. In cold water, the sugar would dissolve after some time. It would take some time, but in hot water it would dissolve rapidly. Why? Because the particles is having more kinetic energy in case of the boiled water. So if you are increasing the temperature, so kinetic energy of the particles is also increasing. They are moving more and more fast. So if they are moving very fast, so it means they are having more and more kinetic energy. So similarly in case of the gases also. So if you are increasing the temperature, the kinetic energy also increases. That you have to remember. Okay. So the energy possessed by a moving object or by the moving molecule is called kinetic energy. On increasing temperature, kinetic energy of a substance increases. Molecules of gases possess highest kinetic energy here. Okay, so note it down. Now this is the next thing here, density. What is density? Density means mass per unit volume. Let's say you have a solid here, you have a liquid here, and you have a gas here. Now if you see, the particles of solid, as I told you, are very close to each other. Let's say this is unit volume. Let's say this is 1 unit volume. This total is 1 unit volume. Okay, I'm just not talking about the volume here. Now just think here. Here the particles are closer. Okay. Now you have the same container. You have a container. Same size container is here also. This must be container. Same size. Here you have water. So you are saying particles of water are much apart, isn't it? Now here you have the gas, same size container, but the particles of gases are very far to each other, isn't it? So now just tell me, in which one container you have more number of particles? Just tell me, in which one container you have more number of particles? Solid, liquid or gas? I think in the container where we have the solid. So here we have the more number of particles. So what does it mean? It means the density is more here. Here you have more density, here lesser, and here very least density. So here, if more number of particles are there in the fixed amount of space, in the fixed space, that is known as the density. So this is, the density is higher here, the density is lower here, the density is very least here. Okay, because the number of particles are very less there. Here the number of particles are highest. Okay, so this is the density. Density means mass per unit volume. It means in unit volume how many particles are there. That is the mass, isn't it? So how much mass is there in a unit volume? So here you have more mass. Getting it or no? If you take all these container, hold these container, so you would feel this is heavier. This is having more weight. This is lesser and this is lesser. Why? Because here more number of particles are there. Because here more mass is there. Okay. So where you have more mass, there is more density. Okay. So mass per unit volume is called density. So in case the solids are having most density, solids are having the highest density, rather I will call it. Okay, so density means mass by volume. Okay, so means mass per unit volume is called density. Are you getting the concept of density? That is all for today. Would be discussing more about this chapter in the upcoming lectures. Till then, stay tuned and keep watching. Thank you. Have a good day.